picture of the House of Usher. All right, so let's talk about Poe. Ready? Are we on? Fantastic. So you had 3 stories to read from Poe. Everybody's read The Telltale Heart before this class, right?
Yes.
Okay. What do you know about The Telltale Heart? When's The Telltale Heart written? When does it appear? Where are we in the story of American literature? Mid-1800s, yeah, 1843. The other 2 stories are a little bit earlier. Telltale Heart gets taught a lot in high school because it's a really teachable story. What did they tell you about it if you had to read it for a class? What did you take away from it?
You told me it was spooky and Poe was crazy.
The what?
Told me it was spooky and Poe was crazy.
It was spooky and Poe was crazy. Everybody else got that message too? Is that the same message? Is that what they're telling the youths these days? Okay. So, now that you're here up at the college, what else might we say about The Telltale Heart? They talk about an unreliable narrator. Yeah? No? Starting at the beginning. So you got 3 stories, and you've got a critical essay that sort of, I hope, yeah, gives you a good deal of insight into the mind of Poe, and the kind of aesthetics that he's working with, the interests, the ways that he produces, he believes, the effects on the page, right? And you read the criticism of the theory of composition, right? Where he walks through the Raven and shows you, or tells you anyway, what he says he did to write that poem, starting with the end, thinking about the effect, putting his people in places, working it out. All right, so here's a teachable story. Let's start with it. It's taken out of order, but it's short and it's useful that way. It's got an unreliable narrator. You jot that down. Reliable narrators are really useful because you can just believe what they tell you, right? Here's an example of a reliable narrator. Oh, I'm sure you can think of somebody. I don't know, maybe Ishmael, maybe not. Maybe Nick Carraway from Gatsby, maybe not. Narrators are frequently sort of blind to their own shortcomings, right? Yeah. But other narrators purport to be quite honest and truthful, yeah? Journalists, they say they're telling you the truth. Saints Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they purport to be telling you the truth, objective truth, right? Historians are reliable narrators, but they say they are. Yes, when they aren't, then we get into all kinds of difficulties. But fiction writers are liars. That's what they do for a living. That's why we like to read their work. All right, let's just find something else to do besides history and journalism. So here's this narrative that Poe gives in the middle of the 19th century. And it's not his invention, let's say, but it's close enough to his invention that he frequently gets credit for it. An unreliable narrator. If you open up the thing and your assumption is that what you're hearing is going to be true, that what you're hearing is from an honest, objective source, Poe just sort of turns it upside down, inside out. How does the story begin? What's he say?
True.
True. True. True what? Nervous. How nervous?
Dreadfully.
Very dreadfully nervous. I had been, and am. But why will you say I'm mad? Now what do you know from reading that first sentence? No, you don't know that. You do not know that at all. He could be perfectly sane. We could haul you off into the room somewhere and you would say, no, I'm not crazy. You wouldn't be crazy. Hmm? He questions himself.
Somebody questions that.
Somebody questions him. This is really important. Now, it may not be clear from that first sentence, right? He could be looking in the mirror, he could be talking to himself, if he's talking to himself, that's a little strange already. No, the only reason for somebody to say out loud, why did you call me crazy? Why will you say I'm mad? Is that somebody has just said what?
You're crazy.
You're crazy. You are off your rocker, out of your gourd, you've lost your marbles. You're several sandwiches shy of a picnic. Water with your balls. Well, something's wrong, yeah? And then he talks about what? Then he talks about what? What does he say next that he uses, he says, to justify his sanity? Oh yeah, I'm sane because I have really good hearing. I'm sane because not only do I hear the things in heaven, I also hear the things in hell. Because, you know, sane. I'm sane because I'm what?
Crazy.
No, not crazy. He says, I'm sane because I'm...
Sick.
Yeah. Look at it right there. How calm I am. How calm I am. If we run up to the third floor and speak to the psychologist, are they gonna tell you that calmness is the measure of sanity? No. No, they're not. In fact, they might say be an indication of something else. He's not just calm. He does things healthfully. Yeah? He's clever. He's wise. He's stealthy. You can run through the story and find, tame. He's gentle. And the worst part, right? The whole week before he kills the guy, he gives you the sentence. It's right there, oh my gosh, on 692. At the top of the page. This is where, if you weren't sure at the very beginning, you're only about 20, 30 lines into it now, and he says, I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. I'm sane because I'm a murderer. But he didn't kill the old man, and this is very important. What did he do? Well, you know, he threw a bed on him, sat on him, sure, you know, that's true. But he didn't kill the old man. What did he do? He loved the old man. He says it over and over, I loved him. He didn't do anything wrong to me. I didn't want his money. I didn't want his property. He was always kind to me. I was especially kind to him before I killed him. What does he say he was killing? Just the eye. Just the eye. That's all. Just the eye. What's wrong with the old man's eye? Looks like a vulture's eye. That's strange. You've seen vultures? No, you can go do your, ornithology work and do some vulture studies and that kind of stuff. What's wrong with the man's eye? It's not really a vulture's eye. What's he got? He's got cataracts. He's got cataracts. He's got that gray silver film, right? It would have been easy. The old man would still be alive today if we'd only been able to get the narrator some therapy, perhaps some medication, to get the old man to the Lasix, right? Everything would be fine. But no, he's got cataracts. And this has caused the narrator a great deal of distress. He's obsessed with the eye. He doesn't want to kill the old man. He only wants to kill the eye. And he isn't able to separate the eye from the old man, so the old man's got to go. Why is the story scary? Ah, yes, that's scary, you're right. But it's not the scariest part, I think. But yeah, keep it. Don't forget that part. Yeah, absolutely. I might, if we're going to rank things, right, the weird voices and heartbeats, I'm going to put that here. The fact that he's nice to him before he kills him, I might put that a little bit like more up on the scary scale. Most scary? Yeah?
He loses his mind and that's pretty scary.
But he's lost his mind. How about this?
He's got his broken down. Yeah.
your roommate doing while you're sleeping?
My old roommate, well, that's a trip.
That is a trip, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you had some strange and horrible experience with that. Yeah. We don't know what happens while we're asleep, but what is it about that that is most horrifying? Because it's genuinely horrifying. Not just that the old man can't see the guy coming in the room in the pitch blackness of the room. Why don't y'all just try this evening to sit still for 5 minutes? Just try it. And see how long 5 minutes feels. You know how the clock can change? You know like how frequently in this class, you're like, I think the clock is slow. No? Yeah? But other times you wish, maybe not this class, I don't know, that the clock really could slow down. Or that there are great moments in your life that seem to be finished this way. Yeah? What does it take to be that dedicated? And he's real precise about it. He comes at the same time every night. Absolutely so. And when you're cut off from a sense of time, you're in a very bad place. There's a great movie, Blue Thunder, with Roy Scheider. Do you know this movie, Blue Thunder? No? Malcolm McDowell? LA Police Force, new super weapon helicopter thing. Anyway, Roy Scheider plays this guy, ex-Vietnam helicopter pilot. And he constantly is checking himself by closing his eyes and counting, right? Or not counting, actually, to see if he can recognize when 1 minute has gone by, because he realizes that when he can't tell when a minute's gone by, he's beginning to slip, he's beginning to lose his mind. He has no internal clock anymore, right? And it's important to know the time. Why is it important to know the time? We've said this before, I think. Why do we care about time? Does your dog care about time? Does your goldfish care about time? Not so much. Animals may move in seasons and cycles, and they may migrate, and they may know more than we think. They don't wear watches. Why do we care about watches and time? Over what? What does that help us do?
Be aware of how much time we have before we die.
Yeah. Be aware of mortality. Absolutely. And when you're not aware of that anymore, when you stepped outside of time, you stepped outside of something that makes you fundamentally, makes you human, right? This awareness of the passage of time. All right, so I'm going to suggest to you that the door opening scene that he does for a week, that's scary. Heartbeat's coming up, though. That's scary, too, right? 8th night, he goes into the room. He has his lantern, yeah? The man's awake. That's scary too. But that's going to flip the perspective for us. That's going to give us this sort of correlative thing to look at, right? We're already like, okay, you're a strange butler. But man, I wouldn't want to be the old guy in bed. Because we know he's a nice guy. At this point, we're prepared to believe he actually is a nice guy. He's just a guy in bed. He's just an old man with bad eyes. In the dark. Which is nice, yeah? Because everybody's susceptible to the dark. And what does the narrator tell us? That on the last night he was what? He was the most careful. He was not so careful. Because what happens with the lantern? It makes a noise. His thumb slips. He's like the least careful that night. What does he tell himself? No, he tells himself the opposite. But he was the least careful. But he opens the lantern and the beam falls as if, predestined on the eye. Yeah? What's the old man see? Nothing. Nothing. Well, he might see something out of the other eye, I don't know, right? But he doesn't see the light because he's blind in that eye. And the narrator becomes furious, right? His whole world disappears except for that eye that he's looking at, an eyeball. I wonder if there's a sort of quiet comment to Emerson on the side, but I don't know, probably not. So, he's the all-seeing, not seeing eye. So anyway, here he comes. He kills the guy, chucks the guy up, buries the guy. Oh, but wait, he was also terribly sure that there wouldn't be any trouble. He'd been so quiet, except for what? Who screams? The old guy screams, and the butler screams. The narrator screams, right? Yeah. He leaps into the room with a yell, right? Aha! And he falls on the guy, and the old man goes, ah! ah! And he flips him an arm and kills him. And then, of course, I'm sure chopping up a body made no noise. And then all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door at 4 in the morning, and it's the police. Poe's really good at the police. He sort of invents the detective story, right? This is true, he really does, genuinely. He does get credit for that. Unless you want to give it to Wilkie Collins and the Moonstone. Write that down, it's a really good book, The Moonstone. The police come in. The guy sort of, is overly confident. He has nothing to fear, he says several times. But now what happens to him? He starts thinking about it, and he's already heard the heartbeat in the room. Yeah? Maybe, possibly. There are a couple ways to look at that. When the police come in, when he's killing the old man, and he hears this heartbeat, whose heartbeat is it? Could be his, or, more alarmingly, no, because nobody's heartbeat can really be heard through a mattress, and certainly not after he's been dismembered and put under the floorboards. Right? Either he's hearing his own heartbeat, but that seems strange. Do you all hear your own heartbeats? That's like Scarlett Johansson and Lucy or something. There is no heartbeat. Where does it come from? His mind, because his mind is unhinged, yeah? What is it that is the condition of hearing those voices? Of hearing, yeah, schizophrenia is not multiple personalities. Schizophrenia involves hallucinations, and projections of sounds, and hyperesthesia. It's the word that shows up lots in Poe, hyperesthesia. He begins to pace, he begins to rant. Of course, he's terribly sane. He's terribly calm. No. Whose fault is it that he's beginning to do these things? It's the old man's heart, and it's also the police. It's their fault. What's wrong with those people? They won't leave. Well, actually, nothing's wrong with those people. They're doing their job pretty well. And they don't leave. And so finally, he confesses to this thing. What does he say at the end? The last line. Yes. And what does he tell the police? Villains, he says, right? Villains! Villains dissemble no more, yeah? What is dissembling? There's a lot of dissembling in Poe. And it's not disassemble, right? It's dissemble. What is that? If you dissemble. The story, to look it up. It's English, you gotta look at the words. Yeah, it's all about the words. It means to pretend, yeah? To act. They're only faking it, right? They're not really calm. They don't really not know things. They know everything. They're just not saying it. They're driving him nuts. Where is the story told from? Where can we be sure that it's being told from? Maybe, but probably not. Hmm? Yeah, probably a cell or an interrogation room. Well, I think you'll just be coming with us, sir. You won't mind, will you? We'll just bring some body parts along as evidence. Thank you. And we'll just take you down to the station. I have a few more questions for you. And when you sit him down in the interrogation room and you hear him and you watch him, what are you going to say? You are mad. No, I'm nervous. Dreadfully nervous. I had been, and I am. But why will you say I'm mad? And the whole thing then turns back to the beginning. And it turns on the state of mind that the narrator is in while he tells you the story. And there are lots of things that you could look at that Poe uses specifically, right? The sort of doubling up of words, right? For emphasis, for neurosis, and for what? What else does it sound like? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Any of those double things, right? Y'all watch Doctor Who? The Sound of Drums. Remember that one? Did you see that one? Yeah. Only it's got 2 hearts. It's clever. He uses all those things to create the effect that he talks about in the last essay, the theory of composition. And then he complicates it with this particular state of mind and the placement of the reader, which is great. Because he's betting, he assumes that when you start this thing and you're like, okay, well, Edgar Allan Poe, I know something about you, this is bound to be a strange story. But we like our narrators, we trust our narrators. When you read your Cooper, it was all about an authoritative voice telling you the story, right? Yeah. When you read the stuff before Cooper, it was guaranteed to be honest and truthful. Maybe not Johnson. But the others, these are true accounts, narratives. So now we're going to complicate things. What is Poe, I don't know, who are some of Poe's contemporary novelists and story writers? English writers particularly. We read Cooper, it's true. Hawthorne was going to come along. Dickens? Austen? A bunch of others. Fielding, a little bit earlier. David Copperfield is a really good example of one of these kinds of stories that sort of exemplifies something about the novel in the 19th century, maybe. David Copperfield, as English is American. But look, so here's David Copperfield. This really is David Copperfield, here. And he says on page 1, right? Chapter 1 is called I Am Born. And he says, whether or not I shall live to be the hero of my life, these pages will show. And then he tells his story. And it ends here. And what's the last chapter called? Nope. Because he cannot tell the story if he is dead. You see, you have fallen into the trap. When would he be able to stop telling his story? Today. It brings you up to now. And everything that happened along the way, I will tell you. Right? And I will tell you truthfully, and I will comment on things, and I will move you in a straight line, and we call that a what? A linear narrative. It's as direct as it can be. The earliest novels will be linear narratives. They're going to take you down the road. They're going on a trip. Don Quixote is going to go from point to point to point and have adventures along the way. Tom Jones is going to be found, and we're going to walk through his life, and there'll be a narrator commenting on his actions and decency and failings along the way. But then we're going to have novels where the story is told by the character who takes you through his stops along the way. Then how are we going to complicate it? Then we're going to complicate it with a narrator who can't be trusted, so that all this stuff becomes questioned and questionable. And it changes. So this is our narrator, right? David Copperfield. Let's get rid of Copperfield. We'll just say the Poe narrator, blood killer. There's our narrator, and he walks us through the stuff. Where are we? We're here, right? That's the reader. And he's talking to us directly, and there are all kinds of assumptions about that, and his story becomes a kind of a loop. It brings us back this way, so we get this sort of enclosed thing, and what it means, whether or not he lives to be the hero of his life, that sort of thing, like today the moral lesson is, blah, 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 all of that becomes disposed of. And the moral lesson or the meaning of the story has to be found in some other way. Yeah? It's a development, let's say. An artistic development. Yeah? It's not as if Poe had to invent that. He just does it really well and does it early. Now, is aesthetics. You read the Tate essay on Poe, yeah? Our cousin, Mr. Poe. So a couple things to say about it. And then think about what he says in terms of Ligeia and the fall of the House of Usher. What does Tate say about Poe's aesthetics? What does he say Poe is interested in?
Scenery.
Yeah, absolutely. Eyes. What is the emphasis in this story, in The Telltale Heart? What is really the focus of that story? The focus is not the old man dies. We really don't know anything about the old man. We feel sorry that he's killed. But we don't know his name. What are we interested in that story? The narrator, and the narrator's interior life. Why we can say he's crazy. really scary thing is, it sort of goes back to that I was never kinder, is that these people are walking around the world right now. And they look like you. And they look like me. And we don't know who they are. This guy holds down a job, right? All of Poe's characters are sort of normal in this way, except that they're also terribly, terribly interested, this is what Tate talks about, not in physical love, but in what? Well, you don't have physical love, you might have spiritual love. Spiritual love. Interior stuff. Interior stuff. You can go out and buy possessions, you can own things, yeah? The trouble with Poe's characters is that they want to do what? Yeah, either own things they can't, like the eye, or the spirit of something else. The spirit of someone else. Did you like Ligeia? No? It's one of those stories that you'll like remember 10 years from now, when you wake up in the middle of the night, and you make sure there's somebody with a lantern, and you'll make sure the corpse you left in the last room hasn't gotten up. Right? Looks like Ligeia. Ligeia is a little bit earlier in The Telltale Heart, which is also sort of interesting, right? Poe's stories in a way become more detective-ish, yeah? More quotidian, more man-on-the-street things, yeah? Maybe less gothic. I mean, Telltale Heart's not so gothic, yeah? But Ligeia in The Fall of the House of Usher, those are great big gothic stories. Ligeia is 1838. Fall of the House of Usher is next year, 1839. The two are related. They're dealing with the same kinds of themes. The Lady Madeline Usher comes back. The Lady Ligeia comes back. There's a lot of death involved. And it's all from the perspective of a narrator that we trust these narrators? We want to. What about the narrator in Ligeia? Who is he to the Lady Ligeia? Her husband. Her lover. But he doesn't know where he met her. It's kind of weird. Or her last name. It's kind of weird. Or strange. You know, I know exactly when I met my wife. I know exactly. I know what day it was. I even know what time it was. I know where she was sitting. I know what door I walked through. I mean, I just know that, right? She was dating a guy named Karl Bartusch. I remember that too. It's true. He was a German exchange student. And later in the evening, I heard him say, "Now we dance!" And they went dancing. Anyway, then she dated me. Now I'm on a long date. So anyway, the Lady Ligeia is a mystery. Total mystery. Like the killer in The Telltale Heart. She's something that we don't understand, who looks like something that isn't what she appears to be. The narrator in Ligeia recognizes something mysterious about her, but he's not like the old man. He's not decrepit. He's not old. He's active, engaged, educated, remarkably so. And what he does is, like the butler in The Telltale Heart, become obsessed with Ligeia's beauty. Yeah? Tate's point in that essay is worth repeating about the Lady Ligeia. What does he say? Do you remember? The description of Ligeia goes on for 2 pages. That's a really long time, y'all, to describe somebody's face. I mean, really. Like, if you write that story and you send it off to your editor's going to say, maybe pare this down some. Right? Quickly. Just let's get through that a little bit quicker, because, you know, faces. Maybe you could explain the face in the action of the story later on, or something like that. Or compare her quickly to someone that we all might recognize. No, this narrator's going to go through every feature. Minutely. And he's going to try to find the kind of beauty that she represents in what? What does he say? You remember? Everyday objects, butterflies, moths, crystals, flowing stream. Or the light from one of the stars in the constellation near, right? In the universe. Now, once you start to, I mean, this is stuff that people still will play around with. You see it lots, right? I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but you know, to use another movie real quickly, you all saw Silence of the Lambs. Didn't you? It was like a weird mall obsession in that movie, right? Yeah, the dead mask mall. That's his mall. Anyway, so there's this peculiar scientific investigation of things. But once you say that her beauty is like the stars out there, what does that do to that kind of beauty? Do you want to